I went on air to confess a love, but first, a crime our university keeps quieter than the bell. Look at the tower. Give it 5 seconds. Hear how silence turns into evidence. My name is Dan. I run the graveyard shift at campus radio, and tonight the truth goes louder than the music. This isn't a prank, and it's not PR. It's the big red button everyone warns you not to press, and the moment someone finally presses it, she slid into the basement doorway without a pass, like the walls stepped aside for her. "Do you know how to listen?" she asked, setting a tiny recorder on my board. Chalk dust smudged her sleeve, the kind you get from scribbling formulas on the tower rail. "Lara," she said, "if we're talking business, call me Bell Tower." I told her I listen every night. She smirked. "Then hear this. The smart IDs lie politely," she said. "They say it's for safety and attendance. In reality, it's a living map of us, where we go, how long we linger, who we get coffee with. Those raw trails go to a partner, and then the university gets innovation grants with glossy photo ops. The paperwork says transparency, the money says otherwise." I tried to argue the way you argue when you already half believe. "If that's true, why isn't anyone shouting?" She shrugged, like it was obvious. "Because there's nowhere to shout. Radio is under renovation until homecoming. The paper needs alignment with the very people it's exposing. That leaves the scoreboard in the gym. It loves numbers. We'll feed it the right ones." At night, we climbed the tower roof. Wind tapped the bell like a tech checking levels. Lara cupped my mug with both hands and watched the quad breathe. "Don't fall in love with pseudonyms," she said. "Fall in love with action." I nodded, even though my heart had already done both. "Mid-game," she said. "We swapped the feed. No names, just transaction chains and motion paths that match reality too well to ignore." Morning brought the CIO in a perfect smile and a suit that knew its own worth. "Radio hero," he said, hand heavy on my shoulder. "Dial down the drama. We're first in the conference." I told him drama is when you become a line item in somebody else's budget. He blinked like I'd spoken static and walked off. The hallway felt colder for a while. We sketched our plan on a cafeteria napkin, the way bad ideas become good ones. Pasha, the assistant coach, hates the CIO's never-ending optimizations. Pasha has a key to the control room. The scoreboard pulls from a local server, which means there's a window if you know where to look. I handle signal and recording. Lara injects the payload, in and out in 2 minutes. If they cut our lane, I hit the bell button and the backup path sings. Lara outlined the payload like a surgeon mapping an incision. Hashed IDs, animated movement trails across a campus map, and a split ledger that shows payments from the data partner mirrored by grants to the school. "Chain of custody stays clean," she said. "Screenshots, checksums, timestamps. We're not doing vibes, we're doing proof." The day before the game, Pasha texted a single line, "Window confirmed." We did a dry run on the newsroom's off-campus node, simulated the feed with a diagnostics page, timed our switches with the kind of quiet that feels like prayer. When I fumbled the timing, Lara nudged my elbow and grinned. "Breathe, radio boy. In, out, press. It's just a button." Game night tasted like popcorn salt and battery adrenaline. I waited by the service door with the clean drive in my pocket and my heart stomping quarter notes. Pasha cracked the door, eyes tired, jaw set. 2 minutes, he said. "If anyone asks, you're here to fix a hum only I can hear." The control room smelled like dust and trophies. Racks blinked like anxious parrots. Lara slid into the chair, steady as a metronome. A security guard rapped on the glass and mouthed that radio was closed. Lara stepped between him and the rack and launched into a mini lecture on acoustic compliance, so confident it bought us a whole minute. I slid the payload to staging and watched the handshake complete, a little green light that felt like a heartbeat. On my headset, I took a breath and went live, low and calm, mixing crowd noise under my voice like I'd done 100 times. Tip-off hit. The gym roared. For a blink, the board flashed a grey diagnostic screen, the kind that makes tech sweat, then snapped back to normal. Lara looked at me, eyes steady. I felt my thumb hover over the switch that would change the night, maybe the semester, maybe us. "On your count," she said, barely above a whisper. I counted down in my head and reached for the button. I pressed the switch. For half a heartbeat, the scoreboard went blank. Then our render bloomed across it, an overhead map of campus with comet trail motion paths, and beside it a neat split ledger. payments from a data partner on the left, innovation grants to the university on the right. No names, no faces, just math with a conscience. Confusion moves slower than sound. You could hear the gym try to make sense of itself. Murmurs, then pockets of silence, then the all turning into oh. Players froze mid-dribble. A kid behind the bench said, "Yo, is this part of halftime?" and nobody laughed. Up in the booth, someone threw a kill switch. The board snapped back to fouls and rebounds like a guilty grin. I didn't wait for the floor to tilt. I hit the bell key. Our backup stream punched through a different pipe, brighter, bolder, like a second opinion that didn't care about bedside manners. Lara didn't smile, exactly. Her eyes did. "Told you," she breathed. Echoes carry. The CIO burst in with 2 security guys and a smile that had nowhere left to hide. "Cut it," he barked, reaching for the rack. Pasha slid between him and the switch with the clumsy grace of a saint and flipped the arena PA over to my radio feed. My voice filled the building. "If safety equals revenue," I said, calm now, "call it what it is. A sale." The dean hustled to the floor mic, palms out, mouth forming the word context. Students beat him there with a chant that had more rhythm than policy. Where are data? Lara advanced a final slide, highlighted lines from the privacy policy that promised one thing while delivering another. The ref held the ball and looked like he'd rather be holding a subpoena. We ghosted through a cinder block stairwell and came up in a corridor that smelled like winter and popcorn. Outside, the night had the kind of cold that clarifies your thoughts. Under the overhang, Lara grabbed my sleeve and kissed me. Quick, sure, like signing a form we'd both read twice. "For the record," she said, breath fogging, "this counts as action." We ducked into the library instead of going home. On a scanner bed, the clean drive became a still life. Casing, checksum, timestamp, my notebook open to the minute. Chain of custody, not vibes. "If they call it a prank," Lara said, snapping photos, "we answer with process." Professor Nadir answered our midnight email faster than daylight ever does. In his office, in a sweater older than 2 buildings, he listened and then nodded once. "You've stepped from campus politics into consumer protection law. I'll escrow materials with the Attorney General's intake. Do not confront the CIO. He will try to make you the story." My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. Nice show. Muzzle at 03. Logs go bye-bye. Sleep tight. Lara read it over my shoulder and went very, very still. "Purge job," she said. "We want the smoking server before the cremation." The advancement office kept its network closet behind a badge reader and a receptionist who had freshman bones in her teeth. Lara walked up in a varsity cardigan and a confidence I envied. "Acoustic interference check on the scoreboard chain," she said, flashing a forged work order Pasha had mocked up. While the dragon argued with her own certainty, I slipped behind a facilities guy carrying a ladder and found the closet. Hot dust. Louder fans. A rack labelled SCBOPS01. I plugged in, cloned what I could, and photographed everything. Port map, device tags, the taped-up sheet with a sticky note password, K4TV 2025, like the universe was tired of subtlety. The audit log showed muzzle.cron scheduled for 03 with a note. Clear mirrors plus off-site caches. I whispered, "Got you," watched the copy bar crawl, and pulled the drive before the clock rolled over. Back on a bench, under a sodium lamp that made us both look like suspects, we traced the outbound connections from SCBOPS01. One endpoint resolved to Proxim Data Cloud East. Another hopped through a boutique PR firm downtown. Lara took screenshots like a tourist on her last day. I logged timestamps, hashes, and the exact route. Chain of custody, not vibes. Dima found us first. Hood up, ankle taped, eyes still hot from the game. "Coach said the trackers were for training loads," he said. "But my girlfriend got a late-night study snacks ad 10 minutes after I left the gym." He handed me a photocopy of his consent form. Clause 14B read like a snake in legalese. "I didn't sign up to be a product," he said. "Tell me where to stand." By morning, the university announced a data integrity forum with the kind of clip art logo you use when you're guilty. We built a plain English deck. How smart IDs ping, how the scoreboard pipe works, why a hashed ID still points at you when you add schedules and cafe check-ins. Nadir agreed to open with 5 minutes on what metadata can prove. Pasha would walk the pipe like a tour guide with receipts. The forum looked like a town hall in a movie. Trustees in navy, students in hoodies, faculty with their arms folded the way tenure lets you fold them. The CIO called our visuals unauthorized and misleading. Nadia calmly said, "We have lodged materials with the State Attorney General." Dima read Clause 14B into the mic and set his tracker on the table like a gavel. The board voted on camera to suspend the Proxim Data contract and freeze all purge jobs. An hour later, the other shoe arrived. Notice of student conduct hearing, Monday 9 a.m. mine. Lera's landed a minute after. "No solo martyrdom," she said, squeezing my wrist. "We planned it together. We defend it together." Priya from the Student Legal Clinic met us with a legal pad and a stare that made chaos behave. "Timeline, artifacts, witnesses," she said. "Do not hand devices to campus IT. Offer escrow through the AG." At 1 to 12 a.m., Pasha sent a screenshot from SCB OPS01, a fresh cron entry named gag.reforge03. "They froze muzzle, so they renamed it," Lera said. "We tunneled into the off-campus node and pulled the job tree." Author field, K4 Hort 25. Commit IP, the boutique PR firm. "Cute," I said. He outsourced his alibi and kept the signature. Hearing day felt like a table read for a show nobody wanted to make. University Council led with, "You compromised critical infrastructure and risked public safety." Lera didn't blink. "We displayed non-identifiable data to halt ongoing harm and preserved logs scheduled for destruction," she said. Priya slid the AG preservation notice across the table like a chess move. Silence did the rest. Testimony rolled in steady. Pasha explained the scoreboard pipe. Dima described training trackers and the ads. Nadia taught metadata like a lab you actually want to pass. The CIO's pen skated in the margins like it was trying to leave. The decision came back 20 minutes later. Formal warning, digital ethics workshop, no device seizure, further discipline deferred pending the external investigation. Not a parade, but not a firing squad. That night, Lera filed a data access request and got a 300-page PDF the next day, her semester mapped like a delivery route. We turned it into an explainer. "Your data is a story, you should help write it." We recorded a PSA under the bell. No scare tactics, just verbs that felt like doors. Echo Lab, she named it. Not a club, a how-to. Spring arrived like new notebooks. Smart IDs flipped to opt-in by default, no penalties. The Scoreboard software went to a third-party audit with results written so plainly, even trustees could read them. We launched Echo Hour on WNUQ, our inbox filled with questions instead of panic. A burner DM called Archivist tried to lure us into basement archives. We forwarded it to Nadir and the AG and chose the quieter kind of bravery. On our last night before finals, we climbed the tower and found the tiny chalk bell we'd drawn months ago, faded, still there. "No more ghosts," Lera said, leaning into me. "Just echoes," I answered. The bell didn't ring, but the wind did, and for once the campus felt like a place that could keep a promise. Commencement week felt like a campus-sized exhale. Between exams and cap fittings, an email landed with the subject line, "No one jokes about," from the Office of the Attorney General. It wasn't fireworks, more like bedrock. Preservation orders expanded, interviews scheduled, and notice that certain university systems would remain under independent oversight through the summer. It read like a blueprint for consequences. The CIO resigned to pursue opportunities in the private sector, which everyone understood as to pursue a lawyer. Proxim Data issued a statement about alignment with community values and paused all student data products statewide. Lera read the press release, then tossed me a high five so soft it was almost a secret. "Quiet wins count," she said. "They just don't trend." Pasha kept his job and somehow got a whistleblower commendation in a ceremony no one filmed. He celebrated by replacing the arena PA's default playlist with student bands and a 1-minute privacy PSA before type-off. "If you wear a tracker," the recording said, "read the form. If the form reads you back, ask why." People listened. You could feel it. Dima's ankle healed. The team made the conference final. He texted us a photo from the locker room. A whiteboard scrawled with plays and in the corner, a little bell icon. "Echoes," he wrote. "Loud ones." During halftime of the last home game, he pulled us onto the court and handed me a mic. "Shout out to Radio Boy and Bell Tower," he said, "for teaching us how to press the right buttons." We finished the Echo Lab Explainer series as finals swallowed the calendar. 10 short videos, all verbs and diagrams. No fear. The comments stayed human, Questions, thank yous. A few I showed this to my mom. Lara made a sticker sheet for orientation leaders. Tiny bells, tiny maps, tiny speech bubbles that said, "Your data is a story." They sold out in an hour. On my last night on air, I wrote a script and then abandoned it. Instead, I told the truth the way we'd been practicing. Slow, deliberate, with room for breath. "If you're listening," I said into the quiet, "you already know how power prefers silence. I used to think bravery was noise. Maybe it's also the hand that turns the fader down until the real thing can be heard." Lara sat across from me, feet tucked under her chair, smiling like she knew the ending. After midnight, we walked the quad under a sky that looked printed in grayscale. The tower loomed the way old things do, patient, unhurried. Lara stopped at the railing where the chalk had smudged into a pale ghost of a bell. "No more pseudonyms," she said, soft, "just names and verbs." I took her hand. "Dan and Lara," I said, "listen and act." The wind flicked the bell once like a wink. Orientation arrived fast. We watched a new batch of freshmen file past the radio booth, the scoreboard, the map where our trails had once lit up the night. An orientation leader pointed to a QR code and said, "If you're curious about privacy, these videos are short and not boring." A kid in a hoodie scanned and nodded like he'd found a cheat code. Maybe he had. We didn't get a bronze plaque. We didn't need one. The campus changed in ways you only notice when you know what to look for. Opt-in boxes that defaulted to no, signs that explained why a camera existed where it existed, syllabi with a paragraph on consent that wasn't boilerplate. The scoreboard told scores, and only scores. The radio told stories, and sometimes ours. On graduation morning, the bell rang on purpose. We stood in gowns that fit better than we feared and worse than we wanted, tassels flicking our cheeks. The dean, new, interim, careful, said words about stewardship and trust that didn't make my teeth itch. When our row stood, Lara squeezed my fingers and leaned in. "Action," she whispered, "always." Later, back in the basement that had become a map of us, I set a tiny red sticker on the board next to the bell key. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a reminder. If you have to press it together. On my way out, I wrote a line on the whiteboard for whoever came next. "Tell the truth. Keep your receipts. Let the bell ring when it needs to." Then I found Lara at the door, and we stepped into a future that sounded like a campus finally learning how to listen. Summer thinned the campus to light and scaffolding. Empty halls carried their own echo. The quad looked like someone had pressed pause. Our inbox pinged with interview slots from the Attorney General's office, the kind with calendar invites and long subject lines. We packed the recorder, the notebooks, and the calm we pretend to have. "No pseudonyms," Lara said, locking the studio. "Just names and verbs." The investigator met us in a conference room that smelled like paper and air conditioning. She thanked us for chain of custody like it was a language too few people speak, then warned us about retaliation we might not see coming. Back-channel references, quiet doors. "You did the right thing," she said, sliding a card across the table. "That doesn't mean it will always feel like it." We nodded and told the whole story, slow and exact. 2 days later, the city's public radio station asked if I'd consider a producer slot. Midnights, of course. "You have a way of making quiet sound like signal," the manager said on the phone. I looked at Lara over the rim of my mug. She raised a brow that said, "Well?" I said yes, with a condition. I'd be building out a segment on digital life people can actually use. Lara got an email from a downtown research lab that had watched our Explainer series in full. Fellowship offer, 1 year, build something practical out of Ecolab. She printed the letter, circled the sentence about plain language, and taped it above my desk like a promise to both of us. "Not a club," she said, grinning as if she'd invented sunlight. "A how-to." Orientation piloted our workshop in a lecture hall that always smells like dry erase. We ditched fear and taught verbs: ask, read, opt, log. Dima showed up with the team, ankle-heeled, handing out stickers with a tiny bell and a QR code to the videos. A freshman in the front row asked what to do if the form made no sense. "That's your answer," Lara said gently. "If you can't understand consent, it isn't consent." A week later, the board announced that Proxim Data would fund a student privacy scholarship as part of a settlement. Marketing wrote it like a hug. We wrote back and asked for 2 changes: first-gen students first and no naming rights. The board surprised us by agreeing and calling it the Echo Scholarship. Quiet wins, Lara said, tapping the headline with a fingernail. Put another tally on the wall. Pasha got promoted to arena operations. The Scoreboard firmware update pushed a tiny thing that felt huge, a visible indicator that said when personal data collection was off, and a link to what that meant. He sent us a video of the first time it lit up, and the crowd didn't notice, because that was the point. Sometimes the best UI is the one that tells you nothing is happening, I texted back. He sent a thumbs up and a bell emoji. On our last night in the basement, we cleaned the studio the way you clean a place you love, slowly, with jokes. I stuck a red dot next to the bell key, not a warning anymore, a reminder, and slid a sealed envelope into the top drawer labeled in case of silence. Inside was one page, 3 lines we'd learned the hard way. Tell the truth. Keep your receipts. Share the mic. We climbed the tower at dawn with a paint pen and found the chalk bell washed to a pale ghost by summer storms. Lara traced a new one, small and neat, under the rail where only the bold and the bored ever look. I added a dot beside it, like a heartbeat. We didn't take photos, we didn't need to. The wind carried the kind of sound you feel more than hear. We left by train because it felt honest. No big exits, just tracks. The campus slid backward in the window, smaller and not. Lara leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "Fear, action, repeat." I laced our fingers and said, "Together, every time." The bell in the distance rang once and then was swallowed by the day. We didn't turn up the volume. We didn't have to.